Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for our midweek Hebrew word study. We are in the book of Ruth, chapter 2, and hopefully you can see on the screen, the verse 19 that we're picking up on. And of course, this is the saga of Ruth as she is being somewhat romanced and falling in love. The uh, courtship, if you will, between her and Boaz. Remember, previously she came upon his field. Again, we believe, obviously, that this is of providence, divine intervention of God working and moving. And this little matchmaking that's taking place here. And we just see how last time they were throwing food on the ground for her. She was picking it up, carrying what seemed like at least 40 some pounds of barley back to her mother-in-law. And now, we have this interaction between Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi, as the pieces start to fall in together. Naomi fills in a little bit of background information, and essentially this is just giving some insight into um, the conversation and the relationship building that's going on here. So as we go through, there are a couple of neat things I want to point out just in some of the Hebrew words that I haven't done in maybe some of the previous lessons, but they just um, came and spoke to me. So I'll share those as we get to it. So verse 19, Vayomer la mota, the mother-in-law, Epho means where. Likta is you have gleaned. Hayom, where have you gleaned today? She's kind of interrogating. Obviously, she noticed that she came with quite a bit of food. And so, Ve'ana sit yehi. So, where did you work today? What's interesting in the Bible is the number of Hebrew words there are that are translated as work in English. And I came across that today in there is in the Hebrew Jewish studies where they go through the first five books of the Bible um, in a fashion divided into about 50 parshas or daily portions, they're called. And in the one for today that I was studying, they had the word for work, and it's a different word than this. And what it opens up is a whole fascinating understanding of trying to gain just a background of what was work back then, because in the Parsha for today, it was talking about the Sabbath day and not doing work. And it's a totally different word than what is used here for a seat. And this would be from a seat meaning to do, to make. But the one used in the prohibition on doing any work, if you will, on the Sabbath day comes from the word malach, which is very similar to the word that is used. Actually, it's the same word that's used for angel, but that stands for messenger. And the idea there is it's something that's directed from the heart. It's like a mission that you're on. It's like you're given a task, but it's a task that comes from the heart, and that is your passion. And that's just kind of interesting to think of that in a context of what the intention of a Sabbath day was, is to have a day of rest, not just showing that it wasn't just the physical labor, but it's just to have your focus and your passion redirected in a different way. And that's something the Hebrew illuminates very, very beautifully. And just happened to think of that as I came across this word here as we're teaching. And so, took notice of the work. And then she makes a comment, which is where we're going to do a little bit of study. It's Makirek. Makirek took notice and then uses the word Baruch, which is translated as being blessed. And I know in some previous studies I have talked about what it means to this thing of blessing. You see it throughout the scriptures. We talk about it in our churches and houses of worship of, being blessed. Those in authority will be giving blessings. We'll say, bless you. But the whole idea of that blessing is always somewhat elusive. It's challenging to define, at least for me. It's caused me to be on this little quest, if you will, to take notice of it and try to think of the connotation in which it was given and what is really the person thinking of. We use these words so often and so commonly that we don't think about what they mean. And here we're going to just take a look at that. And so she's again the English is very rough. You see, it's only two words, Malachirek, Baruch. Now, if you study Hebrew and you maybe sit in on some Jewish studies, you'll find that it's very common for them to say, Baruch Hashem would be blessed of the name, or Baruch Adonai. Um, and another common saying is Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe. They quote this all the time, and it's not something we hear very much in Christianity of ascribing God as ruler of the universe, but I don't know, it has a nice understanding. It helps me bring my understanding of God into maybe a little different dimension, to think of him in that way, especially with all the things that are going on in the world today, and remembering that God is still in control, still king of the universe. Everything is going just as he foretold in prophecy, and we're not to let our hearts be filled with fear. So this word Baruch here is uh, also kind of interesting. Underneath, they have the grammar spelled out, and this is, I'll just read it and then try to explain it. It's a cal passive participle in a masculine singular um, frame. But what's interesting is what a participle is in Hebrew is similar to all of our words in English that end in ing, like I'm working, I'm singing, I'm talking, a continuation of it. And you wouldn't get that from the Hebrew because it looks like it's a completed action. It looks like it's just blessed, like almost in the past tense. And that's the way it's translated in English because to put an ing of being blessing um, is strange to our hearing, is strange to our thought process. But that is the real root of this Hebrew here, is that Naomi is noticing and making comment of this one who has brought blessing into Ruth's life. And she's looking at it in such a way that it's not just a one-time thing. She's actually thinking that this is something that's going to develop. And this is where the wonder of this relationship building is, of what Ruth may have felt, what Naomi may have felt. And, and Naomi had to have something going on in her premonition when she saw Ruth come back with all of this food, thinking, okay, I see God working. And that's really what I pick up as the underlying tone. So this word Baruch is very interesting. We're going to look at an unpacking of the word to just see where it came from. Again, it's elusive to me. You have to have a understanding of a spiritual entity, a spiritual realm, that God is moving to do this, because this is something out of our human ability. Of course, I could be a blessing in someone's life by maybe giving them financial aid, being a help for them if they need work done around the house, maybe being a comfort to them as they're going through an illness. I can understand that part of being a blessing. But then there's the realm where, okay, I can't do any of those things, but yet I call upon God to bring those things into their life in a way that I am not able to in my humanity, but he can in his divinity. And that's where this just becomes so fascinating. The root for this word Baruch actually comes from the understanding of caving out. It is, again, very interesting. Why is that a root for the word of bringing blessing? Is it have to do with taking something out of your own self, creating a hollow, and taking that and conferring it on someone else? Um, Possibly that has a nice thought, nice ring to it. We see that a lot of this, there's a lot of entry here in this lexicon about blessing. And again, it talks about just something that we know the word, but to try to define the word. We come down to the bottom here, and it has barek, which is very similar. Um, it's the same consonants, but just a little different vocalization. And it talks about knees, the knee being used here. So when we go to the word Baruch and open it up, it comes from the root word of to kneel. And again, that's very interesting. We can relate to that when we come into the house of God or we go into our time of prayer. It's very instinctive to bow your knee, and it shows humility, it shows reverence, it shows respect, it shows putting yourself at a lower level of allowing someone who's at a elevated level, which is are all the ways that we like to come to God and think of it that way. So this word of God blessing us or us beseeching a blessing is to kneel down before him. And so, think of that when you see this word blessed, and you're going to see it because it's used hundreds and hundreds of times throughout the scriptures. And think of, how do we bless God and how does God bless us? And again, I don't have good answers for all of this, but it's just very, very interesting. Another page I want to look at is just a few pages earlier that take this realm of to bless and connect it in a way that I never would have understood. And here is the word in another format. It's the Beit Resh Vav and a puffs of feet spelling it, but it talks about the neck of an animal, and it talks about um, adding another dimension to the kneeling down, but also the bending of your neck, having your neck and your head being bowed, I guess is the proper way of thinking it, of totally submitting yourself and totally bowing down. And of course, we know that that happens in presence of a monarchy where there's royalty. It's often, protocol for the subjects of a person in royalty and in who's a king or queen that you would um, prostrate yourself before them, and that is tied in very closely to prayer and to how we relate to God. So I just found it interesting that we see that here, that she makes the use of that word, which has just so much meaning to it. And so she told her mother-in-law, goes on with the story, who she had worked for, and said that his name is Boaz. And of course, that made all the bells and whistles go off in Naomi's mind because she knew who he was. And so we get to verse 20, and we'll see that Naomi responds in a very interesting way. She now uses the word Baruch, blessed, but she ties it to the divine name of Yahweh or Tetragrammaton, um, and ties it to that. And this is God's name in a understanding of his compassion and his benevolence. And again, as I mentioned, we don't know the exact pronunciation of this word. We feel it is Yahweh, but the vocalization, the vowels have been lost throughout the ages, and so no one is 100% sure of how this is pronounced. We do understand that the first two consonants, the yod and the hey, are pronounced as Yah, and that is substantiated by all the words that we have in Hebrew that end with Yah, like Hallelujah, Elijah, Adonijah, all the names of characters and things that end in the YA. in Hebrew, there is no J. So many times in English, it's translated as a J because the first translators had a Germanic background. And so they threw the J in there. But in Hebrew, there is no J. There's only a Y sound. So the word would be Yah. And what's beautiful here is in the name for our Savior in English, Jesus is Yeshua in Hebrew, which is this Yod He, the YH sound, as the prefix of his name, meaning God is saving or Yah is saving. And so, again, that's just a beautiful fulfillment and a beautiful understanding of the Hebrew from the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament being fulfilled in our Savior in the New Testament, and that the parts of the name here, which are used for the Yahweh, meaning the compassionate, merciful side of God, is now being um, put into a new realm of the saving part of God, his action to save. And so that's, again, just a beautiful, beautiful understanding. So as we finish that, she's now saying you are blessed by the merciful, compassionate side of God, who has not forsaken his kindness. Again, this is the word chesed, which is has a beautiful study. There's just volumes of books written on just the meaning of the word chesed, translated as kindness in English, but it takes many, many words to express this benevolence, merciful kindness, loving kindness that's encompassed in this word chesed. And she's understanding that, and that acknowledging that God has moved on her behalf. It talks about him being a kinsman redeemer, and um, Goaleh will talk about that a little bit more, that this word Goaleh, which means redeemer, you'll remember that Jesus comes from Galilee. Galilee, that name is related to this name here of a redeemer. So again, you see these beautiful little word plays and beautiful connections that are brought out from when we know the Hebrew, that Jesus came from Galilee, a place of redemption. Obviously, no accident there at all. So, to finish up today, we're going to go and just take a look at the um, sages and what they say from a Jewish commentary. Here you see we're looking at verse 19, and this is their take on what Naomi may have been thinking as they understand the Hebrew, which is, of course, is much better than I did. Brings out here that Naomi knew that the gleaning had to be by someone friendly, and just the talking of, where did you glean today? Knowing that you got so much that you brought back and the leftovers, they translate this word hesed and being blessed, meaning that a kind person must have befriended you. Um, Again, they bring out too about that Naomi brought back the barley that was already gleaned. And here they point out that this was normally not the mode of operation, that normally the owner would not let you make a mess in their field and beat the stalks in the field, but you had to take them home and bring it. And noticing that he allowed her to glean on his property is another indication that she was being highly favored here, and brings out again about being blessed, even so much that they point out that Naomi was hinting or insinuating that this was going to lead to a marital relationship, and that he was totally enamored with her just because of what he had done for her in all the things that we talked about last week. And so, again, very, very interesting um, as we go through this. And here, as we finish up verse 20, also makes reference that she blessed him in God's name. If you think about that, that's a whole nother topic of study of what does that mean? What does it mean to bless in God's name or in God's authority? That the name is using his authority. It's not just the word itself, but it's the understanding of what's embodied in what words we use to describe God and reflection of our relationship with Him. So again, I hope you see just how beautiful the Hebrew is and what we can do to enhance our understanding just by looking at a few things that are within our reach very easily to study it in the original language. So God bless you all. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the sunshine and the warm weather, and look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye bye.